Okay, it started.
All right, this week is week 4, and Logan and DJ will be teaching us two topics. Logan will be going first with topic 3 with Jason. So, Logan,
Who's
if you want to
Jason?
go ahead, take over.
Okay, yeah. Jason, Jason, mine is on parse and stringify. So this should be interesting because I was trying to get my computer going. I'm up here at church. We just finished Cub Scouts. So I'm connected, but I'm having trouble getting connected to the church Wi-Fi, so I'm going to be using my phone.
Gotcha.
And computer, because I got the PowerPoint on my computer, so let's see how this looks. I don't know if that's pretty legible, right? I'm just going to hold it there. So, pardon the, I just saw parse and string, so let me get to the first one here. So this is a JSON 101 introduction. The term JSON was coined by Douglas Crockford at his company, State Software Inc. in 2001. I thought it was a pretty flattering picture of him. But basically, what I found interesting just in researching just the background behind this, that while not as ubiquitous as XML, JSON is rising in popularity due to its simplicity and ease of use. It's been dubbed XML for young people by Scott Hanselman, who's the principal program manager for Microsoft. Let's see. Basically, it's the acronym stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It just talks about how it's set up is that you can only exchange data between a browser and a server as text, and any JavaScript object can be converted to JSON and sent to a server. Now it says anyone, but there are some exceptions, which we'll get to in a minute. Any JSON received from a server can be converted into an object. And so here's one example of it. So if you're a script, you've got the JSON, so then your starting data, so I put my name, my age, where I live, and then the JSON turned to a string. Then when you retrieve the data, the object that you get, you parse it, and so then you want to get the element so it shows up. So you get the object name, and it'll put that object back as my name. And you kind of saw in here, it talked about parsing, it talked about stringifying. So then on here, we talk a little bit more about what it means to parse. It says that data received from a web server is always a string. Parsing the data with JSON parse turns the data into a JavaScript object. In the case of a JSON derived from an array, that method will return a JavaScript array instead of an object. So it makes sense there. So then the reviver here says if you parse a string as JSON, you can optionally transform the produced value, its properties, or return the value. So I give an example of the parse here that we saw there. This is showing how a parse can convert a string into an object. So this one I found on Microsoft that just kind of shows a little more detail. Instead of just getting back one thing, they use document write to have last name first, and comma, first name, and then the phone. And so all that is in the JSON text, and then you use parse to get from the text, and then the output is that last name, first name, and phone number. So if I'm going too fast, or if anybody has any questions, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep chugging along.
I think you're doing good.
Okay, sounds good. So the stringify, so it says data sent to a web server has to be a string. Stringify converts a JavaScript object into a string. So it gives an example here of a replacer in space. So you can return a JSON string corresponding to the specified value, optionally including only certain properties or replacing property values in a user-defined manner. And so it gives an example here from the string. But this is the other example. So this one shows how you can stringify with an array. So the function here that we have, replaced upper, converts each string in the array into all uppercase. So in the string here has Europe, Asia, Australia, Antarctica, North America, South America, Africa. And then when he uses the stringify continents, comma, replaced upper, then the output is going to be all of those continents, all in uppercase. And again, this one came from the Microsoft website as an example of using arrays with stringify. A little bit about reviver on here. The reviver function, or parameter, excuse me, is a function that checks each property before returning the value. This function is called for each property of the object. If a property contains nested objects, the nested objects are transformed before the parent object. So nested, also known as the children of the object, says for each property the following occurs. If reviver returns a valid value, the property value is replaced with the transform value. If it returns the same value received, it won't be modified. And if it returns null or undefined, then it's just deleted. It doesn't show up. Then the last thing I have for JSON is exceptions, because it said that it can do anything, but some things are better than others. JSON's not ideal in every situation. So date objects are not allowed in JSON. So if you need to include a date in something, write it as a string. So birthdays, historical dates. You need to write it as a string instead of just putting like February 4th, instead of using dashes or whatever. It says that you can convert it back to a date object later. Also, functions are not allowed in JSON. So again, functions, pretty important, pretty vital process of any code. And JSON is not where you want to be doing that. It says if you need to include a function, write it as a string. You can convert it back into a function later. So you should avoid using functions in JSON. The functions will lose their scope, and you would have to use eval to convert them back into functions. So again, it just makes things more complex. But that is my take as far as JSON goes. Does anybody have any questions or want to go back and see any of the slides or examples?
I don't. Do you,
Yeah.
DJ?
No, I thought that was pretty clear.
Okay. Yeah, I think basically as long as you think of JSON by the things you shouldn't do with it, then just know that you can use it for pretty much anything else if you need to. Although I've seen some things I was tempted to put them into here. Somebody did a test comparing JSON versus all these other methods and seeing which one's processed faster. And JSON was not always fastest. There were some other methods that proved more time efficient as far as it goes. So I thought it was interesting.
Gotcha.
All right. If we don't have any other questions or comments, we can move on to DJ and his topic of using Ajax to consume a JSON web service.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
You want to go ahead?
Yeah. Just a second. See if I can share my screen. Let's see. There we go. Okay, can you guys,
just fine. Mm-hmm.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm glad that these two lessons are tied because just like Logan explained, JSON is used in
DJ, I'm not able to see your screen anymore. I don't know if
you're not.
Yeah, it shows up as black to me.
Yeah, it shows up black now.
What
there we go.
I'll just keep it this way then.
Okay.
So yeah, like Logan explained, there are examples that, there's some cases that you can use JSON, and luckily Ajax is one of them. So, jQuery Ajax. Ajax stands for asynchronous JavaScript and XML. So it's a web browser technology independent of web server software. And so most of the web browsers will actually recognize, and you'll be able to use Ajax in most of the browsers, if not all. Might you might not be able to from anything Internet Explorer, anything below than 9, I think. Most of the things that they use in 8 and lower have been deprecated. So they use XHTML for content, CSS for presentation, and JavaScript for dynamic content display. And so with Ajax, when you hit submit, which is known for also post method, JavaScript will make a request to the server, then it'll interpret the results and then update accordingly. But users have no idea what's going on in the server. It's all going on in the background. So it's pretty convenient. And data is stored in XML format and fetched from the server. Then it uses the XML HTTP request objects in the browser. So, and then lastly, you need JavaScript to make everything happen. I mean, the Ajax name itself has JavaScript in it, so it's pretty self-explanatory. Then, so you can use Ajax in any way you want, but for me, the easiest way to explain was using .NET Core. So that's Microsoft. So using C#, it was the easiest for me to explain. And I'll go back and forth, but I'll just simply explain some of the terms so everyone's on the same page. So here, like we talked about in the topic, we use API, which is Application Programming Interface. I'm sure everyone's aware of it. Then MVC, which is a Model View Controller. So has 3 main elements. Model, which is it handles data. So it holds data, and view is where it prints out the data. That's where the users actually see the data, and the controller is what you're going to do with the data. So any questions so far?
No, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. Then Razor, which is also known as Razor View, it's kind of cool, and especially for ASP.NET MVC model, it's kind of cool because instead of using ASPX or ASCX page, you can actually use something called CSHTML, which you can go back and forth in the view between HTML and C#. So by using @, you can actually use a C# code. So if you want to pull up something from model or controller, you can actually use that in the view. So nothing has to be hard-coded. It's pretty convenient. Then as far as syntax goes, these are some of the things that you can actually include. One thing that I forgot to put in and usually goes on the top is cache property. So if you're pulling the same data using Ajax call each time, then rather than just pulling it from the server, you might want to just cache it. So cache is set by true or false. So if you want to cache it, set it to true, if not false. And then there are 2 types, get or post. Get is obvious to get all the information, data, grab the data that you need. Then post is when you're trying to change that data, or trying to submit. URL is where you would post the URL to take you to that API. So in this case, it would be the API controller. So by locating that and putting that URL, Ajax will go and grab that API controller and all the data that's in there. And then content type is the type of data that you are sending. And then data type is the type of data that you're expecting back from the server. after the call is made. And then, so also there's success and failure, error. But for JQ, XHR, anything higher than 1.8, success and failure has kind of been deprecated because it's not as responsive and not as fast as done or fail function. But you can still use it. I've seen success and failure being used quite a bit. Those are functions that you can use, based on the condition of the AJAX call, how it went. And then HTTP GET is you can see that in the API controller, that it tells the routing engine to get any GET requests to the action method. So, whatever method that you have, and the URL /API method that you're using, it will grab that. So, for example, like I said, model, it handles data. So, for example, if you want to, I have a class called personal detail, and then has all these strings, and then last one is admission date. So, like for example, for students, when they're admitting, so they're here in API controller. This is where you can actually use the model information. So as you can see right here up top, it has the HTTP GET. So this is it's telling the routing engine that this is going to be the GET method. So in order for you to use this API controller in your AJAX call, you would have to use GET. And then there's here's IEnumerable, which is same thing as list, but except in C# you can't change the data. It's pretty much read only when you're using it. So it returns a list of students with type of personal detail, and then here I have it pre-populated, but using the code you can call different methods and populate it however you want. So I have regular number, name, address, phone number, and admission date. They're all populated, and then it returns students, which is the list. And then in view, at the very top, since you're using jQuery's property, make sure you add that jQuery. And usually for C# at least, when you're creating a API in a project with the web API, it will give you a jQuery JavaScript file. So in there, also in the view, it sets up like the top navigation menu. So we'll, in the table, it will organize it by regular number, the registration number. I mean, name, address, phone number, and admission date, and then below that is when all the data that we populate is going to come in. So here's the AJAX call. So within the AJAX call, this is $.AJAX. It's like you can set that as a variable. That variable will grab whatever that AJAX call has gone through. And so in this get method, like I said, in the URL through API, student API, get all students, it will go and grab this method from the controller. And then this is the most popular one. the application/JSON. So like Logan talked about, here's an example of JSON being used, because you can return, however you'd like. Depends on the type. The data type, that's JSON is what we expect back from the server. Then here's success function. So if we want to use success function, how I have it set up here is, for Ajax, for each of the data that we grab, I have so item will be each JSON item that we grab. So for the list, for example, we returned 2 personal details. So one was with my name, the other one was with John Doe. And so there are 2 items of the list. And then so it will go through each item in the list. Then it will print that out according to what it's trying to grab. And then last here, $, then the hashtag table, that's ID. In the view, we had it set up as table for ID, and so that's where it's going to start printing. So it will append, it's using append function and adding the variable rows, and so it's going to add 1 list of items at a time. And so that's success function. Then failure and error, those are obviously when things go wrong, when Ajax call didn't go through the way you wanted. Failure is when you have test cases and then they fail. So you can create unit tests or integration or system tests for these if you want. Unit tests should be just fine, but if they fail, they will alert and show exactly where it failed. I had the log function set up. And then error is when unexpected errors, such as exceptions. For example, if you get a null reference or instance error, then that's where it would go to error. So this is what it looks like. So usually when you go directly to the API, the top picture, that's usually what will return, and you can actually see the data. And then how I had it organized is the bottom picture. So you can see how in the view we had the first 5 columns of the top row, and then the rest of them were populated according to Ajax call because it was successful. And then the picture on the right, you can actually inspect the element. Then in the console, you can see all these lists of items, and inside it has JSON data populated, so you can actually go through and see that it has been populated correctly. Does anyone have any questions so far?
So I'm hearing myself for some reason. I was asking, so I kind of understand what you were saying. I appreciate you showing how it pulls in data and what it looks like on the back end. So using Ajax to read in the JSON document, like to be able to pull all it in. I was asking him if we use, and I was looking at those commands that you were using, and I was kind of starting to go down that road, but he said we had to use XML HTTP request. Do you know what the difference is?
So XML HTTP request, according to my knowledge, so that's where it will return XML form.
Okay.
And so, and then you can actually use that XML to populate, however you'd like. It really depends on, I guess, how you want it to look like. So if
Right.
you want it to return the XML data, then you would use the data type as XML, and that way you can use the XML data according to how you like. And then the method, I'm guessing, would be for example, up there. And when you're setting up API, you would use, instead of HTTP GET, you would use XML HTTP request. I've seen that done actually in multiple cases. So
Yeah, I've never seen it before, and I was like, exactly what you have here is kind of what I was doing. And so he said that they're almost interchangeable,
okay.
but he says we have to use XML HTTP request. So I'm like, well, I looked that up, and I know there's like an actual I don't know, it's a method or whatever that you can actually use. It's called XML HTTP request, and then there's all kinds of methods attached to that. But I wasn't sure. He didn't explain further, so I'm not. I'm just like going, okay, well, do I kind of continue down this road, or does he need to see that actual, XM? I don't know. I'm gonna have to do.
Yeah, it's kind of a difficult to implement it, in my opinion. Like you, I have seen more of just HTTP GET. That's more
Right.
common, and
Yeah, that's what I've used.
yeah, I would say that for me at least, that was more convenient. But
out of curiosity, have you written your code for this topic yet and submitted it?
no, I have not.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was just curious to see if you
yeah. I'm debating whether I should do it in C# or I actually try to implement and use something else for it, because I mean, it being mobile development class, I'm wondering if I should start using like Java, but
I think everything should be in JavaScript, but I don't know, I could be wrong, but
yeah.
I think that's what my understanding was, but
Okay.
I did too, but I'm not sure either.
I don't know. The rubric is very unclear. I mean, it just gives you, that statement of what you need to do, but it's like, as far as what he's really expecting,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me feeling that way, but
Yeah. I'll see if I can find anything else that has to do with that XML, and then I can probably share the link on the conversation. I'll also go and look at some of the code that we use at work using XML HTTP request, and then I can try to create an example file for it and try to explain more. So
you'd be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll probably skip all. So
yeah, the reason why I asked him the question in the topics that he gave us in his post, it says using Ajax to consume a JSON web service. I'm like, okay, I know how to do that. But then in the rubric where you go to submit the assignment, it says using XML HTTP requests to consume a JSON web service.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked him, hey, what's the difference? What are you looking for? And all he said was those terms are used interchangeable sometimes. You need to use the XML HTTP request for the assignment.
Oh.
So I'm like, okay, well, thanks for clarifying. But what is that? I've never heard of it. So, yeah, I was just curious. So, I mean, they've got to be similar, but.
Okay. Yeah. I'll try to find something, and I'll try to
do the same thing.
possible. So.
Okay. Awesome. But no, I really appreciate you showing the back side of that too, because what I've used before is like, just going to the internet and grabbing like data, like weather data for latitude and longitude or something like that, and just use that API to go out and grab that data, which is awesome. So I was kind of familiar with that, but you don't know what it looks like on the other end. I just pull it in and just grab what I need to grab from it. But
Yeah.
I understand that you can actually create all that as well.
Yeah.
And pull from it. Cool. Very thorough. Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right. Back to you, Ryan.
Well, if there's no other comments or questions, then I think we are done for this week. Next week, I believe, it is week 5, and it will be me and Roberto. If hear from him, if not, not sure what you guys want to do about
I was
that.
going to just do the one and see if he talked a little bit to us, but
Yeah, we can just see if we can get in contact with him and
okay.
Just proceed with both of those. And if he's not able to show up, we'll just do one.
Whoever's recording, could you paste the link to that in that Sheets document? The YouTube.
I think DJ,
Oh,
you're recording.
You're talking about like today, right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this meeting.
Okay. So wait, post what? Link to what?
The YouTube video that for this meeting.
Yeah, for sure.
Posted into the meeting link. Not tab.
this
column
one.
in the spreadsheet from our Google Docs group.
Also, do I need to turn in anything besides that? Like, do I need to do anything else?
What he was saying, from what I understand, is when you can go in and submit your topics, you submit the link as evidence of professionalism, and also if you taught, then it's evidence of your understanding. So you would just go in and submit it. Hey, this was our group. So he said technically only one of us has to for the group, but most people like to submit it just to make sure it actually got submitted. So I always submit it. But
okay. Well, if that's the case, I won't worry too much. I mean, if you could go ahead and submit it, I won't.
Yeah, I just put them, and I didn't see anywhere in the actual lesson to submit the group videos, but he did say to just put it under the on all of our assignments. So I just that's where I put it. I just upload it and say this is our group video.
Okay. Sounds good.
Perfect. Well, next meeting will be around Wednesday, 8 or 7:30 Mountain Standard Time, unless anything comes up and we need to adjust the schedule again or anything like that.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
Have a good night, guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.